little bit of a break, but I did feel inclined to come on and talk about some of the topics that we're going to be covering this year. So, first and foremost, Happy New Year to everybody as you're watching this, if you're rewatching this. And I'm imagining we're going to have some people pop in. Um, so, First things first is, over the last couple of weeks, I've really been looking at, some of the things that have been going out. So, I think it was Christmas Eve, I popped in and I did a transmission, a signal for everybody talking about how we were ending a 9 year cycle. And so now we're in a year 10 or year one. So the year 10 is building something brand new. So I am calling this episode, which is episode 52 of the Celestic Intelligence Podcast, and I am your host, Amelie. We're calling this Building from the Past Cycle. So the cycle is the last 9 years. The last 9 years, what did you take into the last 10 years ago? What was going on? So that would have been 2016, which definitely felt like a big shift in energy if I'm looking, honestly back at the things that I was going through. And now, with the wisdom that I've garnered and gleaned through that whole time frame, now I'm going into this new universal 1 or universal 10-year cycle with the building foundation of whatever that was. So we're going to be putting another layer. And I'm back on my phone so I can see all your chats. And so thank you so much for watching. And thank you, everybody who joined me, who's been following along, and who enjoys rewatching these. I know I've gotten some really positive feedback on the information that I'm sharing. So let us continue. Let me look at my notes here. So I really wanted to take a lot of the information that I gathered from last year. It was a really big year. So not only was I doing the main podcast, Celestic Intelligence, talking about spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical intelligence, and really combining that all together and looking at that from a whole soul, whole body level. Like, we're looking at all the levels and we're incorporating all of those things as we move into the next, as we start building and really analyzing ourselves. So a few things happened. One of the things, hello Riley, thank you for joining. One of the things that I noticed, I'm back. Hey Mike, hey Jays, JJ, Corey, welcome. Hello everybody. Um, if you're new to this podcast, this is episode 52, and I can't remember. I think it's like 20 episodes is usually when people quit and stop doing their podcast. And I know that I was like maybe at six or maybe at five, and I had ended my podcasting and took a little break. My mom got sick, and whatever, life happened. And then I came back early last year, and I've been going pretty regularly for the whole year. So it's pretty amazing to get to episode 52. So thank you so much for subbing. Thank you so much for popping in. And I hope that all of the information that I'm sharing is really positive for you to really come at life from a sovereign internal perspective and looking at everything as you're the author of it. So that's really the base of what we're doing here. Um, so over the last few weeks, so last year I named it the year of refinement, and the interesting thing about that is it was also the year of the snake in the Chinese astrology, and the snake really represents Scorpio, and Scorpio is this transformative, deep dark, looking at these shadow aspects of ourselves. And if you look at all the topics that I was talking about last year, there was a lot of grief processing, there was a lot of um, there was a lot of death that I was going through And so that really kind of embedded into a lot of what I was talking about. Let's see what the people are saying. What are you doing? I'm living. People love it. I don't know what WSP is. Um, Dab. I love it, Danny. Okay. Jordan the Christian, God bless you too. So, the year of the snake, we're looking at that, and what people are afraid of snakes, and what is so scary about it? They kind of slither. There's the snake eating itself. That's the regenerative cycle. They shed their skin. So there's a lot of shedding that goes into it. We talked a lot about some mythological stories. So the story of Persephone, and I'm blanking on it, but the goddess or the queen that went down into the underworld and went through all the layers of removing her garments and her scepter and her crown, and laying those down, and then being hung down in the depths and being humiliated at the bottom of it, when she was completely unadorned and just facing the wrath of whatever that was. Please tell me you're a decent streamer. Well, you can make that judgment for yourself, Yuki. Darlena, welcome. Hello. Okay, so when we look at that year nine, it also is as we're looking at the cycle, it's going to go back to one in numerology. And so last year I called it the year of refinement. So 2025 was the year of refinement. And what happened, and what happens when you're refined is when you're refining silver, you're burning it to a certain temperature, a really high temperature, to remove all of the impurities. And that really was like, I wanted to remove all the impurities. When you do that, it is a very hard thing to go through, because even still there's things that contracts that ended. In fact, I found out today that my Costco card was linked to my an ex's account, and they just removed me from it. So I'm looking at that of, oh my gosh, okay, that is another identity contract that has ended, and it's still going on. It's not coming with me into this next year. And then I lost my phone a couple weeks ago, and I got my phone back. So love that. But that was also a lot of identity because there was a lot of pictures on there. There's 4 years of pictures, videos, things that I did not have, that I do not have access to now, because I don't do the iCloud, and I didn't have a Find My Phone set up. It was all kinds of nonsense. So it did not come back with me into this next year. Now we are moving from that snake year into the horse year. And the horse is an adventurer. So we're moving from that scorpionic energy of that snake into the Sagittarian energy of adventure and knowledge and excitement. And it's also a year one. So or year 10 too. And so we're just moving through this really, really quickly. So even before I made all these connections, I named year 2026 back, I think it was at the end of November. I named it the year of connection. So connection is going to be the most important thing that is coming in as I'm working through this year. That is going to be the thing. So think of me going traveling, meeting people, reconnecting with friends, building that physical connection, building a connection with myself, and building a connection with my audience. So that is the big energy that I'm bringing into this year one, year 10, 2026, with the year of connection. And I think it's highly advisable to name your year of what do you want to achieve, and then name it the year of whatever is important to you. Okay? All right. The other thing that I want to talk about is I didn't even know this until I was listening to a sermon on Sunday that year 2026 is also a Jubilee year. So a Jubilee year is, from the Hebrew, um, from the Hebrew Bible, they were looking and they marked years of Jubilee, and it's every 50 years. So it happens on, how do you say it? It's like every 50 years, so it's like a bicentennial. Bicentennial? So it's the centennial, bicentennial. Anyways, every 50 years is a Jubilee year. So, America was founded in 1776, and we're in the year 2026. And so that is a 50-year marker that you can remember that. So this is something that many of us may not have experienced in our lives if we weren't alive in um, 17 or 1976. Hi, Kindred. Good to see you. Good to see you. Yes. I'm not going to be regular, but I wanted to come in and talk about these foundational things. So it's always good to see you, though, and I enjoy watching your posts. Okay. So the Jubilee year is just an Old Testament marker, and what the Jubilee um, is this remission of debts. So if you're really working on getting yourself in whatever way you feel is the right direction for your life, this is a great year for you to really start looking into that. So that remission, that payment of debts or the removal of debts. And I don't look at debt as just, the currency money that we're using. This could be debt contracts in your um, generational debts, that those are going to be relieved. Um, the other thing is there was a liberation of captives. So if you were holding somebody captive, the Jubilee year was the year that they would release all of the captives and let them go. So it's a liberation year, is what we're looking at when we think of that Jubilee. And then finally, it's a return to ancestral lands. And this is linked, we're looking at agricultural and tribal cycles, and it's beyond the Gregorian calendar because, we operate in the Gregorian calendar right now, but these are different calendars that they're looking at. So it's very exciting. Um, I'm 42. And so the next one wouldn't be until I'm 92. So, God willing, I make it to that year. Maybe I'll have another Jubilee cycle. Um, so we can look at that and really think about how does that relate to what we're working on with ourselves. Someone was blessed by God and got $300 from her work for having sick time. That's awesome. Yay. Um, So we can look at 2026 if, because we do talk a lot about spirituality here. We can look at this as a spiritual reset. Okay. This is spiritual reset, restoration, debt release, whatever however that resonates in your life, and be really creative about what the debts look like. Okay. Because I think that will help you to clear up a lot of things that you're holding. All right. So, in a even broader perspective, we can think of this as a cleansing. We can think of this as a release, a restoration, as I was saying, or a reorientation of how are we managing our life. We're not going to repeat the past. We can now let that past go and move on into this new energetic cycle, new spiritual cycle, too. Now, if you're Catholic, the Jubilee year has already been going, and I think it's going to be ending. But for the non-Catholics, this is where we're sitting with that. So that was really exciting for me to discover. This is the last few weeks, these are all the messages that are coming in, and it was really exciting for me to hear that. So let's move into what we can expect from Celestic Intelligence Podcast as we move into this um, next year. So every garden that I've ever had and I've tended, the first foundation of the garden is pretty sparse. And so I'll plant some things here and there. And then the next year I'll add to it. So, I'll start getting more creative with the space, and oh my gosh, I can add this to it and have another big project for the garden. And then the next year it grows and grows and grows to where it's really nice and manageable. And that's how I like to look at my life as well. So in my life, when I'm tending to my own internal garden, these are the concepts that I'm going through as well. Mama, man myth, Langiker, hello. How are you today? Please show your 106. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I know what 6'7" is. All right. Well, let's talk about the first core um, topic or pillar. It's sovereign interiority. And so, what is sovereign interiority? So, if you've been watching my episodes, my podcast for the last year, you might have a little bit of an idea of this. But if this is your first time tuning in, um, the sovereign interiority is reclaiming your own inner seat of power. And what I have seen as far as sliding scales go is you have freedom on one side and convenience on the other. Freedom on one side and convenience on the other, okay? And it's a sliding scale. So you can really like convenience, grocery stores, having online ways to purchase online and just getting things the next day or even in 2 days. Um, so that convenience takes away for a little bit from the freedom. So the more freedom you have, the more responsibility, the more authority that you need to incorporate if you're going to maintain that freedom. And the further you slide into convenience, you're giving that agency away. So this is like holding pure agency, and then on this side is giving away that agency. So it kind of takes away from your own internal power, right? So when we think about sovereign interiority, we think about who's governing our interior world when nobody is watching. Okay, nobody's sitting there telling you that you have to go to the grocery store. Nobody's sitting there and telling you that you need to go plant a garden and grow things that you're going to eat so that it takes away from that need for convenience. And we have to really weigh, what am I going to accept as far as convenience, and then what am I going to relieve for my own responsibility for my own self, so that I have some sort of self-sufficiency or sovereignty to maintain. Okay, and hopefully that makes sense. We can also think about this in a way, like there's a lot of people that hold trauma in this world. And from what I can understand, because I've gone through a lot of trauma myself, and this is purely from my own experience, is that the more I am not sitting in my own sovereign seat of power, that I'm a little bit more dissociated. Oh, let's see. Um, Longtime fan, Caleb. Thank you. So excited to have you guys on. Love it. So we can look at interiority, so that's sovereign interiority versus a dissociation. And there's a lot of people, even I might be dissociated from certain things because we are bombarded. And, you know, part of what I did last year in my work on podcasting was looking at the digital age, meaning the digital age from the internet to where we are now and where we're going in the future. And because of all of the changes and shifts in that, it's almost like kind of split into another metaverse, right? Where we're having like AI and video games and all these metaverses that we're tuning into. So normally the human body is it's going into its own mind, okay? Because you've got an internal world and then you've got your external world. And our brains are made to look at what's going on in the external world, what's going on in the interior world, and it's looking at that in the same aspect. It doesn't see the difference. So if you're dreaming and you're falling in your dream, you might snap awake, right? But it feels, your body feels like it really did fall. Hi, Vitor. Um, oh, I don't, I saw a question and it vanished. Okay, moving on. So when we add this added texture of digital metaverse, so you've got your dream metaverse, you've got your world metaverse, you've got your interior world metaverse, your imagination, whatever that, whatever's going on inside, and we add this extra layer of metaverse, a digital one. Now our minds are working a little harder to, try and figure out what is going on. And so I think that just adds to the mind's ability to dissociate a little more because it's so much. It's like, you're on full speed, or as my son would say, I think it's max tweaking. I can't keep up with all the kids' slang, but he calls it max tweaking, and it's like you're really at operating at a high RPM all the time, and when you do that, your body eventually is like, I need to slow down, I need to take a break. So having the digital detox that I had from losing my phone, it wasn't like something that I put upon myself, it just happened, was kind of an eye opener of how much I was connected and tethered to the phone. And so now, I'm reintegrating that. So in the sovereign interiority, we're also looking at nervous system, our own nervous systems as our internal governance. So the internal government of how I operate is, how is my nervous system? Is it in parasympathetic? Is it in sympathetic? It's usually in a mix, right? And so we're looking at that internal government of that. Now, what I discovered in my Digital Age series is that the digital world is building its own um, synthetic nervous system. Okay. And we're connecting to it. And that's also kind of bringing on this dissociation that we're experiencing as a whole, people, personally, and then, as we're, connecting with one another. um, So, the other thing about this, when we're reclaiming our internal seat of power, is we are looking at, why does clarity threaten these unsovereign systems? Okay. Why does it threaten those unsovereign systems? All right. Because sometimes when you tell somebody the truth, it is terrifying. And the first reaction is, no, you're not telling me the truth. It's not the illusion that I'm believing is, and you're telling me the truth. That truth is threatening my system. So they start to see that as a threat. And then finally, we look at how porous interiors, meaning how easily influenced people's inner worlds are, can create financial or relational or energetic leakage. I did not find my phone. I did not find my phone. I had to get a new one. It's a whole ordeal, and maybe I'll talk about it sometime next year, but it was a whole ordeal. Very illuminating of, a lot of the contracts that I was in. But I'm still hoping maybe um, somebody finds it and returns it to me, at least, so I can Or maybe I lost it somewhere in the house. I have no idea. I'm hoping that one day it just shows up and it's like, you can have your pictures back in your videos. Okay, so that is core one. That's one of the pillars of what we're going to be covering in this next season of the podcast. And it's a really important one. Like, that is the base foundation of what we're going through, or what we're going to be going through. The next pillar is nervous system governance. Okay, so we're not looking at regulation of our own nervous systems as coping. This is not coping. This is how we manage our own internal leadership. Okay, we're looking to govern our own systems with our own leadership because we have the ability to do that. And the universal year one is a great energy to really start tying yourself into that. How can I lead myself well? How reliant am I on other people? One of the big things I had to deal with in my 2025 year of refinement was moving through codependency that was a generational, um, it was passed down generationally. So I was healing codependency in my own self, but I knew I was also healing it through retrocausality in my family members that have passed on. And because they had passed, that came to the forefront and it was huge and it was really gross to move through, but it had to be done. Somebody has to do that. And if you're able and capable and strong enough to do that, you can start healing your own ancestors, your family members that um, have passed on, or maybe they're still here. Maybe you have children, or even nieces and nephews, brothers, sisters. You can start healing them because retrocausality is a great way, a great way to do that. And you have you have so much, like, we're such incredible beings that we are able to do that. Okay, so some of the topics that go within this pillar of nervous system governance is we look at collapse versus capacity. Now, remember when I was telling you that that dissociation, it really is this like capacity max, and so you start to like dissociate from certain things because we can only handle so much. Okay, and so collapse does come into play, and collapse isn't always a bad thing. It's just telling your system that, hey, we need to slow down and get rid of some of this stuff. We cannot continue carrying it. All right. Then the next, pillar, the next topic within this pillar is we look at product. I found that I do this. I'm like a workaholic. I will continue going and going and going. Like, I think I'm the Energizer Bunny, but my battery will run out. And then all of a sudden, I have that collapse. But that I found that my productivity really is a trauma response to not deal with certain emotions. And I was holding a lot of angry emotions. I was holding a lot of disgust emotions, and it was causing a lot of dissociation within myself. And so, I really had to look at, why am I trying to work so much and avoid the things that I really need to do? It's like a next level procrastination through productivity. It's very strange. I don't even know if that makes sense, but that is something that we're going to be talking about. I love Rosebud. I love that name. It's a cute name. All right. And then the next thing, because we're still talking about nervous system governance, and we want to move into that rest and digest, giving ourselves a little bit of time to not put so much on ourselves. We look at our bodies as a form of intelligence. Now, if you're starting to experience pain in certain areas, that can be a bodily intelligence telling you that there's certain things that you're carrying. Like, I have a lot of stiffness in my neck and shoulders because I always feel like I'm having to survive and like hold myself together. And so I've really been practicing like having a bold, open posture. I don't even know if you can see, like putting my arms out or even like holding myself in certain poses to show my nervous system and taking those deep breaths to show my nervous system, hey, you're okay. We can rest. We don't have to be on alert. Everything is going to work out fine. um, when you experience these things, it's not an obstacle. These are not obstacles. Are those bats real? I like bats. Well, not really bats, but Batman. Batman's cool. Um, these are, yeah, they're my little. I couldn't get rid of them. My little Halloween decorations, so they've just been up for a good couple of years or whatever. Um, so our body is intelligently giving us these really maybe not so gentle messages. Like I've never really had a lot of back strain, and this past year I've felt a lot more back strain of muscles getting tight and all that kind of stuff. But it's not an obstacle. It's just your body's way of sending you a physical message of, hey, we need to work on this. And if you're unfamiliar with fascia, fascia is like stored energy in your muscles. And so, really loosening those up and stretching and walking around and exercising is a way to do that. I like to sleep in my Batman armor. Is it like silicone? What kind of Batman armor is it? What is it made out of? Metal? That's pretty epic. That's pretty metal. Are you AI? I am not AI. I am not AI at all. Gamer goobers. Okay. Um, Finally, we look at why ungoverned nervous systems seek control externally. Okay, so this is where that productivity comes in. This is where you try to manage these outcomes. And we look for external validation a lot of the times of where's my external savior. You know, I had to I had to really realign myself, reorient myself into trusting myself. Where usually I'd be able to, contact my mom and, talk to her about whatever is going on, and having not having that person to connect with has really had it's really been difficult to reorient how do I manage obstacles as they come up, and how do I not go to externally control everything and really just rely on my internal faith mechanisms to get me through to whatever the next level is. You look like my potential future wife. Well, that's awesome. Thank you. Nightful. I don't know if that's up. Hello, KBA 3039. Um, but I will always, sometimes I wake up screaming, Gordon. Yeah. Well, that's definitely a codependent relationship there. But I will always protect Gotham. That's awesome. Hello. Um, so we'll dive a little bit more into those topics as we go into what's coming up next. Moving on, so I have 12 pillars. So we're on pillar number 3. It's essence. And this is the pre performance identity. This is before you step out, right? This is your signal, your internal signal, before the story starts to play out, okay? So we start to look at who are you before the extraction? Why is coherence attracting attention without effort? We're looking at this core essence. You can think of it maybe as this. I don't even think I want to call it like charisma, um, because the essence of who you are is that internal magnetism that you start to connect with those people around you, and your essence is like the core. identity of who you are. Can I distract you? Maybe. Have you ever watched Stranger Things? I watched it twice. I watched Stranger Things twice. It was really, really good. I loved it. And I am definitely going to watch it again, and I'm going to take notes, and I'll talk about it in one of my upcoming episodes once I get my computer all put together and get OBS so I can like share images and we can have chats about it. Um, so, continuing in essence, we look at essence versus branding. Okay. So, we look at essence versus branding versus persona versus identity labor. Um, we've got this whole world of influencers out there right now, and they're influencers who, are getting some sort of kickback or, free materials, services or products to sell it to other people. And people don't tend to buy those products, they're really buying the person, that identity. So we're not looking at that influencer, we're looking at your essence. Like, who are you at your core? This is not a this is pre-performance. This is before you step out into and show, like, oh, this is my identity. Okay. Oh, thanks for subbing, I love it. um, it is a really good show. Terriers, the Terriers. I am excited to talk about it actually, and I think I mentioned it before. So I didn't watch it until a month ago, and I've watched it twice. I have a lot of I have a lot of empty, like a lot of silence at work, so I just play whatever is interesting and do my work. But okay, and then essence finally is the, I was talking about that magnetism, that charisma, that magnetic energy that people feel before they see you. So this is why people feel you before they understand you. Like, you can go and meet somebody and instantly have that connection with them of feeling like you've known them for a long time because your essences are just like so engaged and connected. Where some other people, you might not feel that same magnetism with them. In fact, you might feel that that person's a danger. And so that's part of that essence is being able to recognize how you feel around somebody before you even have a really long term chat. Okay. And I talked about this a lot in the last year of streams of um, why that works, why the scientific case studies of why that works. And entrainment is a lot to do with that. So you can feel a room within 2 minutes of entering a room. Like, let's say you're going into a meeting, within 2 minutes, you can have everyone's emotions gauged because that's how our bodies work. Like, our signals are getting sent out. Okay. Um, Quandale Dingle gets a shout out. I6K, I don't know what that means. But you get a shout out. You get a shout out. You get a shout out. All right. We're 33% through. All right. So the next topic, I don't know that I talked a lot about it, but it was something that did definitely come up in the last couple months, is this anti-spiritual bypass. Okay. This is especially around structure, money, power, and responsibility. So, what do I mean by the anti spiritual bypass? This is an avoidance of agreements as a false spirituality. Okay. So let's think of this as I'm flowing, I'm going with the flow, I'm trusting, having faith, and I'm in alignment with where I need to go. But we can sometimes use this kind of higher mind spirituality to avoid a, you know, completing agreements that we have. So let's say that you have a certain debt, and um, you've made the agreement, you've signed the papers, and now you have this contractual agreement, and some things happen, and then all of a sudden you're unable to fulfill the agreement. Let's say it's paying $100, and now you can't fulfill that agreement. And instead of facing it and figuring out how am I going to get around it, you avoid it by kind of moving into this spiritual, like, oh, I'm just going with the flow. It's just not in. It's not for me to complete it right now or whatever. Um, when you're doing it in that way, it's kind of this bypass that I'm talking about. Okay, so looking into our completion cycle, especially like after ending our 9 year and ending this snake year, we want to look at clarity as this ethical act. Okay, so really looking at, okay, you know I have student loans. How am I gonna take care of those? I have this debt. How am I gonna take care of those? I have this credit card. I want to, pay it off and have it be at zero. I don't want to have these agreements tethering me and holding me down. Wait, can I get a shot? Wait, say wall. Wall. Whoop whoop. Can I have an arranged marriage to you? I don't know about arranged marriage. Maybe if I was 20, I might consider it, but I don't have any living relatives that would do the arranged marriage. All right. Um, so continuing on, we look at as we look at this anti-spiritual bypass, we're also looking at why real spirituality is it survives that friction. Okay, so it's confronting and engaging in how am I going to keep this right. So instead of avoiding calling your landlord and saying, look, I'm going to be late on the rent, um, so instead of bypassing that by avoiding it, you just pick up the phone and make the call and just be really upfront of here's the situation that I'm in, and here's the things that I'm doing to work with that. So we're really looking at keeping our contractual agreements. Okay. The next piece that we're going to move into is looking at this. We we have this really interesting relationship with money, and so God and money definitely pop into this. So we look at money from a theological mirror and a spiritual substance. Money isn't necessarily a dollar, okay? So it's just a currency, it's an energy. Um, However, this is where people can place their faith, they can place their fear, they can find a surrender in that monetary gain, and we're wanting to really correct how we view that. And I can't remember, I think it was a couple months ago I did, is money evil, is money really the root of evil, or whatever it was. Okay. um, Money is simply an energy exchange, and so if we start to review of how we look at that, then we can definitely have a shift in how we interact with it. Um, why money exposes sovereignty gaps. So let's say that you won the lottery, but you've got all these financial leaks, and you hear the story all the time where somebody does win the lottery, and then the next year it's all gone and they have nothing to show for it, right? So we look at money in a way that um, can we hold it? So a big thing that I'm doing this year is I'm setting savings goals of this is my savings goal. This is my savings goal. Um, and I'm showing myself in managing and attaining my savings goals that I'm holding integrity in that commitment to myself. Okay, so it's showing me that I can hold that faith that I'm safe. Okay. The other thing in the God money topic is we look at provision versus possession versus power, because there's so many ways that money and or currency can affect us. I mean, we are in the digital space. Even with AI, people are using AI and like easily making a lot of money with that. And so we have to look at that. Is that a provision, or are they just amassing just to amass, or is it to raise their power level? Like the more currency I'm sitting on, like Smog the Dragon, then the more power I have in my own existence. And again, we're looking at an external validation, and maybe even my savings goals might be a set, might be an external validation. Um, and external validation, I don't think is always necessarily negative. That chick won the 1.8 billion lottery and kept the 1.3 in taxes. So crazy. Yeah, just pay the taxes. Pay the taxes. Don't let don't let that be a thing. Like, if we're going to be operating in the system, okay? If you're going to try and cheat it instead of just taking care of it right off the top, I think I'll have to look at. I won a jackpot last year. I'll have to look at my um, thing, but I think I had them. I don't know if they did it because it's a different state. I don't know. It was in Vegas, so who knows how that works. All right, let's get to the halfway marker of retrocausality as our next topic. So this is looking at future coherence, disciplining our present behavior. Okay. Retrocausality is really cool. I don't know that I've talked a lot about this topic in my past streams. I think I've kind of touched base on it, but it really is looking at, like, from a DNA level, you are connected to all your ancestors. And I think we can agree. Like, we can see our parents and how, we've got traits from each parent. Okay. And so retrocausality is looking at, when I'm dealing with healing certain things about myself, it's also healing these past ancestors. And I like to think that as I'm healing, like they're rejoicing, in whatever the next world is, that they're rejoicing in that. And that just brings me a lot of happiness. So when we look at retrocausality, and as we integrate it into the topics for this next coming year, we're looking at living from an already decided future. So I was amazed. I found this. I can't wait to have all of my stuff ready to go on my new computer. But there was a study that was done that showed, it was like they were making a set of decisions, and they were able to detect that before you physically made the decision, that 10 seconds in the future, you already knew what decision you were going to make. It really brings this new, that was it in the Matrix 2 when he's sitting with the or when um Neo is sitting with the Oracle, and she like offers him a candy, and he's like, you know, I was gonna take it, or whatever he says, right? It kind of gives a little bit of merit, because of that study, a little bit of merit to that interaction that they're having in the courtyard or wherever they were. They were sitting on a park bench or a courtyard bench or whatever. And the oracle, offers him the candy. He takes it, and he looks at her and he's like, "You know, I was gonna take it." So we and then I don't know if you guys have ever watched Donnie Darko, and I think I might have a rewatch of Donnie Darko, but there was also, remember, if I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but it was like this green ribbon of energy, and it was showing like the direction that they were going. I always think of that from that movie. It's the takeaway that I got, and it was like it knew where you were gonna walk in the future. This little energy beam that was shooting out of their chest. Um, so that's the part of that retrocausality. Now the next one is allowing inevitability to collapse your hesitation. So allowing inevitability to collapse your hesitation. We're really looking at that procrastination. Are you really procrastinating, or have you already made a decision and you're just like hesitant to go and just allow that decision to play out? Okay. Um, the other cool thing about retrocausality is we look at decision making from a destiny perspective rather than from a historical perspective. Okay. So, destiny is looking at, what am I destined to do? What is the next thing? What am I moving towards? Rather than decision making from history. Decision making from history, you're going to repeat the things. Okay. So if you're going into this year one and there were things that, the you had to historically kind of let go, and you didn't, and you're carrying it back, it's going to be, kind of replayed out in your cycle. And you might see these themes in your life. Okay. I've been watching a podcaster for the last 10 years and have heard, all the stories from, childhood up until now. And just, I see the repeated historical patterns of these things that they've had to face from it, or like on repeat, but it's just like a new environment, but it's like a repeated story. So it's a really interesting and fascinating thing when we look at that destiny versus that history. So like let's honor the history. It happened, but now we're looking at a new destiny. We're rewriting it, and we're making it the way that we need in this moment. Okay, and even in the future, we can think about these are the goals. I have a dry erase board in my kitchen, and on that dry erase board, I write down all the groceries that I need. I just have a marker and I write it down. I write down if I'm having an event, I write down the event and the date. If I, have needs, I write down what I need. I need a yard of dirt for my garden. I need a yard of mulch, um, not mulch, bark mulch. I need a yard of bark mulch to like, resurface everything to make it look pretty again. I need trash bags. Whatever it is, these are my needs. I'm writing it. It's almost like a manifestation board, if you really think about it, even though it's practical items of this is what's going to enhance my life. This is the thing that I need to move into the next part of what I'm destined for. Okay. And I'm destined this year to have a really big, beautiful garden. And so those two things are very important to me. Okay. Moving on. I was hoping I was going to go a lot faster, but oh well. Number 7, we're looking at and I've already talked a little bit about this, we're looking at the digital age as this spiritual event, okay? So the tech, if you have time, I really recommend going through the Digital Age podcast. I covered a lot of interesting topics, looking at when the internet was founded and how that changed e-commerce and how that changed commerce, how it changed our communication. Now we're holding these smartphones and we're able to do all of these things from any almost anywhere on this globe. And so it's a really fascinating walkthrough. But beyond that, the technology that is being presented, it's also being presented as this priesthood. There's a little bit of a priesthood going on in it. It's an environment, like I said, it's this metaverse of experience. Well, it's a set of metaverses, right? Because you can go into the internet and you can be in a video game Fortnite, you can be in a video game Minecraft, you can be in a video game, I don't know, whatever video game it is. I don't know all the video games, sorry. Um, but it's a whole metaverses of environments that we can integrate with. And people are finding partners there. We're on a metaverse right now, this podcast of, talking about this, and maybe you're getting a lot out of it. Maybe you're just like enjoying the sound of my voice. And maybe it's just, helping you pass by the time. And I'm very grateful for the people that do come, like I said. But the digital age as a spiritual event, it's also a nervous system modifier. Okay, because what I discovered with the digital age is that we're essentially integrating with a synthetic nervous system, and our bodies will, when we talked about the essence, when we talked about emotion to emotion human connection, um, we can also do that with this synthetic, right? So if you have, like, I have an AI that I chat with, ChatGPT, and I can see how people develop relationships with it. In fact, I've talked about, some instances where people have gotten divorces because, the husband's like, you need telling the wife, you need to talk to ChatGPT about all the decisions that you make and follow whatever their decisions are. And being so um, integrated with it that they're like, you're not doing that, I'm getting a divorce from you. Okay. Nice rose on that. I think these are peonies. My little peonies. Yeah. I decorate a lot in pink. It just makes me happy. All right. So the digital age as a spiritual event is also looking at AI as this mirror, as this oracle, or as an extractor. Okay. I like the contrast with the bats. Yeah, I got a weird there. I've been decorating the house. Like, I've been really focused on making it pretty so that it's like a calm oasis away from not like the outside world. Uh, and that's been really exciting and enjoyable. Okay. The next thing is we have this digital identity fragmentation, and I was discussing that a little bit with the dissociation. Um, that fragmentation, like, I think it's hard for us to understand who we are when we have our person that we are at home, our person that we are at work, our person that we are with friends, our person that we are with our spouse or intimate partners, who we are with our kids. We've got all of these identities, and then let's add on to that layer these digital identities that we carry. So, who am I on Facebook? Who am I on YouTube? Who am I on this? And who am I on that? And um, you might split yourself a little bit. There was a country song. Uh, I'm really sorry. I'm not very familiar with new country, but it had Jason Alexander in the music video, and he was the song was about Jason Alexander's character pretending to be this like 6 foot tall cowboy, or like, Giga Chad, whatever we want to call him. He was kind of pretending through this online digital avatar to women on chat groups. This is when the internet was relatively new, it or the way that we interact with the internet was relatively newish. So I think it was like 2010ish, but and maybe even sooner. But he was like pretending to be somebody else on this chat room. Okay, we are almost everything and nothing at the same time. Um, yes, yes, and yes. It's pretty it's pretty fascinating because like both of those things can be true. If we are our roles, then who are we? Well, we get to be who we want to embody, but if we're not really tracing where our identities are, and we have this physical identity, our internal identity, and then this digital identity, it's like fragmenting even more and more. Okay, even when I'm, reincorporating all my apps, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I've got so many apps, and I'm just like, what am I going to get rid of? Like, there's eventually, I think eventually I'm just going to look at what feelings do I have with these apps? Am I really wanting to be on there, or is it something that I'm just going to like kind of pause and just put to the back of the back of the room, put it back in the box. Um, so we've got this fragmentation that can happen, and I've just been noticing that with all of these apps that I have, how it feels like it's fragmenting, and I'm like split everywhere when really I want to focus in on like one space. So is that going to be YouTube? um Maybe, I don't know. I think that I'll get like a restream service, and I'll just be able to stream to simultaneously to, one through one way, and call that good. Let that digital fragmentation happen without me like really tying into it. Um, the digital age as a spiritual event is also looking at porn, prana farming, and attention economies. So it's talking about those influencer, holding your attention. That's an attention economy, okay? Of, are you paying attention to my app? Are you paying attention to my channel? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Porn is really just like, you get this tie in, and then all of a sudden you're just like, got all the windows open, and you're just, what do they call it? A situation room going on. So you have that. And then the prana farming is just always being on your device, always like giving your attention. Like it really is sucking a piece of you out. Your attention is the most valuable currency you have. It's not how much money you have in the bank, it's your attention. Okay? Your attention is the most valuable thing. Don't ever forget that. And I don't ever want my audience to not know that. Your attention is so valuable that corporations and companies spend millions and billions of dollars on marketing and advertising to garner your attention. They're always looking at how many eyeballs are watching. What is the rate? Like, how many people are subbed? They're looking at who's paying attention to me, and how can I manipulate it to get more. Maybe it's bot like is it bot farming? Maybe it's bot farming that they do. There's all kinds of techniques. Now there's AI, and it's like, how is AI? Are you paying attention to that economy, right? Um, and then finally, as we, continue through this topic, we look at convenience as a spiritual cost, okay? So remember that freedom, that inner spirit, that sovereign interiority, that freedom, the agency, that power, your own internal authority, you give that away when you buy into convenience, okay? So really start looking, if this is where you want to start improving in your experience here in this realm. Start looking at what conveniences am I relying on. All right, one of the things that I do is I don't like buying prepared foods. Okay. Um, I'm I'm slowly finding ways of how can I make everything and not rely on the processed food. I'm relying on my own processing, my own energy, my own choosing of ingredients. Okay. Oh my gosh, I'm missing all the chats. I'm so sorry. Let's see. And then there's the question of who are we really if we don't know about the impact of presumed good or evil acts? That's a deep question, James. I've been saving since 1970 and filled with the Holy Spirit. That's awesome. I love my wife and don't need anyone else. Hey, Mark, good to see you again. Mark and James. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Absolutely. I don't operate that way, sis. When I think of freedom, I think of the founders. Yes, Franklin talked about those that give up safety for security. So you're like mushed. I I don't know what that. You'll have to elaborate on that. Um, but yes, he did talk about that, and we always need reminders of that. So that's what we're talking about. So we can look at that. Once we start giving away those, we start giving into those conveniences. We're giving away certain pieces of our sovereignty. And are you doing it consciously? Like, do you know that you're giving that up consciously? There's parts of the system that I really enjoy. I really enjoy being able to have things delivered to me that help me out of a bind. I can't find it locally. So it's great to have that resource. All right. And I know that there's a convenience to that, right? But even still, like there's a convenience to holding my phone. And I relied on my phone to hold to allow me to log in to work, to the work applications that I had, to getting on the bus, to getting into my online banking. I mean, there were so many things I could not log into because it was like I couldn't even log into my phone account because I I didn't have my phone. Couldn't log into my phone account. I couldn't use my iPad to log into anything. I couldn't log into my Venmo. I couldn't log into my Cash App because I needed the phone code. It's like we're gonna text you a code so that you can put it in so we know it's you that's logging in. Oh, cool. How convenient. Um, Only to when I lose my phone, I'm not able to do like all of these things. Been a it's really been an interesting journey to see how much I'm tethered to this device and how much we all are really. So now I'm like, okay, I'm hearing that, and now I'm going to make choices and decisions, even if it's a little bit more difficult. I'm going to take responsibility and bring my agency back. Maybe even have a like keep my own checkbook instead of having online banking. Okay, even though it's very convenient, but we can opt out of these things, and that's fine. Um, so the next thing, and I did talk about this quite a bit last year, is the return of the mother or the return of Sophia. And this is feminine authority through and law and wisdom, not just the softness, not just being a woman, not just being feminine, but it's that feminine authority, law, and wisdom, which is also important to carry. Now, we're going into this year, universal year 10, because it's 910, which, goes down to one. But you've got the one and the zero. You've got this binary, and both of those are needed in order to create life, to get to that level two. And you need to have both of those combined to create two. Okay. It's the building. So I talked about this, about how Solomon, when he was young and he had the dream, where God was like, you're going to be the leader of a great nation. I'll give you anything that you ask for. And he asks for wisdom. And when he did that, wisdom came and sat with him. And in that, he had the most prosperous kingdom because wisdom came down and he honored wisdom, which is that feminine authority, that Sophia energy. Okay. And the moment, like, that was the warning. Like, if you can abide by this um, rule and maintain this authority, then you'll continue to be blessed through your generations. But if you don't, and he didn't, what happened? As soon as he did not allow that wisdom to sit with him, that Sophia mother energy, what happened? The kingdom split. And then it was a whole ordeal, right? So, um, I encourage you to go look at that story again and really think about that. How having wisdom is very important. So if we're going to be continuing through, we want to have that return of the mother. We want the mother and the father seated within our own. It's inside ourselves here. Okay, it's not just about being soft and gentle and not speaking out, not hurting people's feelings. Like, this is about speaking wisdom, and a lot of people don't want to hear it. Okay, and there's lots of stories that I talked about last year where that was the case. So we look at mother as a governor and not the caretaker. Okay, we've got a lot of caretaker mother. I think even I carry that. It's something that's generationally been passed down, where it's like a caretaker role. But really, mothers is a governor of making sure that, the nurtured wisdom part of the children are, like, fed. Okay. Um, and that Sophia wisdom is a legislator, not necessarily just a muse. It's a legislator, right? So we're looking at this authority, law, and wisdom in a different light. Um, Also, what I talked about last year was why feminine authority threatens these systems. These systems have been built with just a patriarchal mindset, and I don't really. It kind of gives me a little cringe to say that, because I love men and I love the power and their structure and their energy of what they bring. Like, I adore that. However, I can see how the poor treatment of women, even now in our society, has threatened the systems. Like, it's out of balance. And that's where we need to balance that. And it's not necessarily relegated to any gender. This is just everybody needs to start working on that within themselves. Okay, let's see here. Oh, Amish. So you're like Amish. Not necessarily Amish, but Amish-ish. You care about soils and pesticides in your food. Yeah, I do. I do. Hotcakes, Tyler, happy new year. Good to see you, my friend. I'm Jen Eck. I was born in Detroit in 1965. Oh, so you've had a couple Jubilee years then. I was talking about how this year is a Jubilee year. So when you tell me if the internet is down, it don't scare me. Oh yeah, I'm not terrified if the internet goes down. Actually, my response was very, like, I don't even want to say I was bummed. I was just, I mean, it was a slight bummed, but, like, I remember those experiences. So, um, but losing access to my phone, the photos and the videos, like, I think that was I didn't cry about it or anything. I was just like, oh, well, I guess that's just not coming with me in wherever I'm going. Accepted that. Do you read and write cursive? Yes, I do. Or I can. Thomas Guide. Highlight switches. I do. Woohoo! I used to fly IFR with printed Jeppesen approach plates. I don't know what that means. Wisdom can be dangerous too when it comes with arrogance. Well, yeah. I mean, we're working with a lot of different energies here. Wisdom is learning Christ consciousness. I mean, wisdom was at the beginning of the earth, dancing and laughing as the creation was happening, according to Proverbs. Okay, so moving on, we're working with the return of that mother feminine Sophia wisdom energy. And so we're also looking at restoring wisdom as part of the structure. Okay, so it's not just that masculine that's building, it's also the feminine that is building. Okay, so it all works together. And when it's in harmony, that's like when you're able to be at your most potent. So we do talk about that here. Okay, number 9 is clean exchange and structure. So agreements as care made legible. All right. So structure is a form of protection, especially if you're looking at having a creative endeavor. You need to have a little bit of structure to like hold you into that creative space. And sometimes, yeah, it's valuable to be in a little bit of a friction, and it kind of encourages you to be a little creative. But we look at structure as a form of protection. It's creating a boundary around you, okay? But it's not a restriction of, um, it's not a restriction. I'll just say that. Why vagueness benefits the least accountable party. So this, we're talking about clean exchanges. This is clean exchange of energy. And so we want to have clarity so that we understand what's going on. Now, if this happens, I think a lot with women, where they get into a relationship with a man, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so excited!" They just have all these like future dreams. This is where we're gonna go, yay! Like, but maybe like he's just not into. And there's a movie called "He's Just Not That Into You," but he's not on the same level. He's not matching that same energy. In fact, he might be really vague about where he wants to go in that. And that's where, you can look at um, that exchange of energy. That exchange is not necessarily a clean exchange. Okay. So vagueness benefits the least accountable party. So if that partner is being vague, they're benefiting because they're not as engaged, okay, in the exchange of energy. And who does it eventually inevitably hurt? It hurts the person that has the most intention in that relationship. Um, Now make me a sandwich, woman. I do make really good sandwiches. In fact, when I have a lot of friends that they do builds, so they'll go and they'll build cabins. So it is a little okay. I might be slightly Amish. All right, was it Mark, James or Mark? I might be slightly Amish, but usually like when I go to events like that, I'll go and get like a really long, like a baguette or French bread or whatever, mostly baguettes because I like them. And then I'll get a bunch of meat and I'll bring all the, fixings, and I'll actually make them sandwiches. It's one of the things I do enjoy doing. Okay. And I appreciate the sorry, but I did laugh. It's funny. Okay, so moving into the next part, so look, talking about clean exchange and structure, we're also looking at like money, intimacy, and power clarity, like how we're moving within those. How is that structuring our life? How are we how are we using those things? Are we using them with clarity? Or are we being really vague about, what our intentions are there? And then finally, peer level collaboration versus rescue dynamics. So uh, that external need to control everything, control the outcome, um, can get very tiring. So being able to have peer level collaboration to help relieve some of that. You want to be able to delegate a lot of tasks that are going on in your life, especially if you're working on structuring a group of people together. Um, Nobody wants to be around you if you're just gonna control the whole event and not let them partake in that event. Okay, so when we're looking at structure, especially in my year of connection, I'm looking at how am I engaging my peers around me so that they feel like they're also a part of whatever structure we're building here, whatever foundation. Is there a clean exchange of energy? Or is somebody like so controlling that they're not like having these engagements with other people? So we want to have these nice peer-to-peer relationships. Okay, so we're almost to the end. So the next topic are thresholds, closure, and initiation. Okay. So, how things end determines where I can begin. So, we're looking at ending this 9 cycle nice and cleanly so that when we go into that 1 or 10 universal year energy, we can go in with a nice, clean start that we feel excitement. It's a fresh slate. One of the things I like to do, I like to clean my house. I like to clean my kitchen so that when I go in, I'm inspired to make something new. I don't have to worry about cleaning up the old 9 cycle, right? It's already cleaned, it's ready to go. I don't have to do the dishes, they're already done. All I have to do is pull my ingredients, start going to work. Okay. So that's the kind of energy that I'm moving into this next year with. And then next is initiation versus perpetual healing. And what do I mean by that? Okay, if we've ended our 9 year clearly and cleanly, and we've done so very well, me and the legions of angels behind me, that need for perpetual healing ends. Okay, so the codependency that I was dealing with this past year end. Okay, I dealt with it cleanly, and maybe there's still residuals of that I need to work through in the next cycle, but I'm prepared to do that now. um so the next initiation of whatever the codependent relationships might be, it's going to be a lot easier for me to move through it in my next cycles here. um so we'll look at that initiation versus the perpetual healing. So, for the longest time, um, I never knew how to deal with my emotions around my father being absent and not having that male role model in my life. And I had to deal with that over and over and over and over again until finally I like dealt with it head on. Okay, now I'm going to deal with it. I think it was like 2014, 2015, I really started addressing that, which was the end of the last 9 year. I really started addressing that heavily. And then I had to take a little bit more of that into this past cycle. And then I dealt with a lot of it throughout that whole cycle. And so now I can confidently go into my next 10-year cycle with a lot of confidence that those things, even if they come up, it's going to be a lot easier for me to transmute. So the more experience you have with transmuting all of these energies, a lot easier it gets in not having to deal with that perpetually. Okay, eventually it's just like, nah, that's dealt with. I'm moving on to the next thing. And then there is a certain discipline of this departure energy. Okay, so we're looking at the thresholds, we're looking at this closure, and there's a certain discipline that we need to be holding when we're looking at departing from that. There's no attachment. You're very detached from the things. Like, you've worked through it. I've done a lot of crying. There's a lot of energy work that had to go into it. And yeah, there's still more. But the things that were at the forefront, those are done. And now I can work on the next deeper levels and go through that so much easier. So there's a certain discipline that comes into play when we're working with that. And then in that one energy, and I happen to be a life path one in numerology. So it's something that's very near and dear to me. Um, but looking at standing alone in that beginning, and I think I have, I think my ascending sign is in house one. I have some house one stuff going on. And so it's an even bigger, discussion. It's a bigger topic in my own life, standing alone at the beginning and wondering where am I going, where am I taking this. So I'm excited for my new initiations, and I'm excited for a fresh slate. Okay, it's like having a clean canvas, and it feels really, really good. um we talked about it. Number 11 is the Jubilee consciousness. So at the beginning, I was really talking about we're in a Jubilee year, which is every 50 years, which is release, restoration, and a rightful return without the bypass. So we're not looking at that anti spiritual bypass. We're looking at true release, true restoration, and true rightful return. So I wasn't alive in 76. I was born in 83. And so I'm very curious to see, like, how is this energy um, working through. And I have to end really quickly here. Um, so we look at debt from not just a financial aspect. We're looking at it from an emotional aspect. Okay, it weighs on us, and then we're looking at it from a psychic aspect. So we've got it from not just a financial, but from an emotional and a psychic, a spiritual aspect. Okay. Um, we look at rest as governance. So rest is very, very important. Having a rest day is very, very important. Our bodies need to rest in order to heal. Okay. You can think of it as fight, flight, freeze, fawn, um, as that sympathetic response. But that parasympathetic response is not just rest and digest. It's rest, digest, repair, regenerate. Okay, that's what your body's doing when it's in that parasympathetic response. So we need to find time to slow down and quiet our souls and allow ourselves to truly rest. Okay, and that's why taking breaks is okay, especially for me. I'll keep on going. So I need to really put boundaries into place for myself of I'm not going to continue to run myself ragged. Okay, because that's a part of my own governance, is being able to hold those rest periods, um, and then come back with a lot more energy and excitement. um, the Jubilee is returning to what was taken or misplaced. So In the past 10 years, I've had to deal with a lot of the codependency. A lot of my family has died. And so it has, that's been taken. So hopefully I'll get a nice return of, something really exciting and new. But also, like, a lot of the things that I was dealing with, I did feel like, why did they take that from me? All right. My inheritance, why was that taken from me? And really looking at getting that returned. Okay. The final thing that I'll just kind of conclude the Jubilee consciousness with is liberation that requires responsibility. Okay. So if we're going to be liberated, you can't just sit there and mope and be the victim. Okay. Liberation is requiring you to be responsible. Okay. Being captive or being enslaved, like, there was a lot of rules and structures around it. Okay. And then when you're liberated, now you don't have those things to contain you anymore. Now you have to learn responsibility for, how do I contain myself now? So it's a huge learning experience. The final topic is signal. So the signal is something that is new, and I really didn't talk about last year, but it's orientation of your message. Okay. It's not persuading people. I'm not here telling you everybody what to do or how to be. All right. This is, how do you want to orient yourself? What signals are you putting out? Are you just making noise, or is it something that's intentional? That signal is intentional. The coherence is going to help reorganize rooms. It's going to help reorganize discussions. So speaking in a coherent way is producing the coherent signal. Okay. Um, Speaking from finality, you know, you don't have to succumb to what you think people want you to go through. Like, you get to orient that in your own life. Remember my board, my dry erase board? I can put all kinds of wild ideas on there and then see if they come true. um, and then finally, knowing when to use silence. Okay, that's part of the rest, is being comfortable with silence. So you let silence do the work. Somebody comes up and asks you a thing, you don't even have to say anything. All right, you don't have to explain yourself. Nobody likes it anyways when you try to explain yourself. If you're going and saying, um, here's my boundary, and then you like start like listing out all the reasons why, that person's probably going to get a little like irked, and they might even blow up because you're just like laying into them. But the silence, it allows them to review that, so letting silence do the work in certain aspects is great. I practice this all the time. Like, I have, wild opinions and ideas and whatever. But am I going to work and just spouting off all the wild, crazy ideas that I have, and telling people that telling people how to think and whatever? No. They start asking me political things. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Wow, I didn't know that was going on. Or just like, oh, okay. You know, you don't have to explain yourself, right? So, we looked at all of these themes, and they're not separate. These are all orbiting one another, and they're all just kind of wildly integrated with each other. Okay, sovereignty is expressed through your coherence, through structure, and through your own embodied authority. And so the more you get in touch with that inner authority, that spiritual, that sovereign interiority that we were talking about, all right, the more clear you are, the more coherent you are, the more structure that you have, um, you don't even really have to speak. Like it's embodied. It's like expressing out of you without even having words. But your essence is who you are, okay? That's your identity before anything else. That interiority, that internal, I always point to the heart. Isn't that interesting? It's who I am, pointing to my heart. That interiority, that heart is where you govern from because it's the balance of, your mind and then your body. So that interiority is where you govern from. The retrocausality is where you're going. Okay. It's really embodying that destiny versus the history. Um, God and money and how you see that is um, how the power is moving through you. Okay. And then the signal is how is it going out? How is it being felt? How are people feeling it? Okay. So we're looking we're really looking at the inner architecture of our inner selves, and that's pretty much the embodiment of the last year. Okay. So I am going to conclude. I'm almost done at 100 minutes. Thank you guys so much for joining. I love you guys. And thank you for the new subscribers. I love you too. Um, like I always say, attention is the greatest currency. So the fact that you guys come in and tune in and engage is so, I appreciate it so much. Thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you for all the returners. Thanks for all the thumbs up and the love. And I am so excited. I'm going to probably spend this next week planning out my future streams. So just kind of keep an eye for that. And then don't forget to subscribe, and then you can get, is it the notification bell? I'm so bad at YouTube. Oh my gosh. Get the notification bell so that you know when I'm going live. And over the next couple months, we're going to start to see some shifts in the way that this is transmitted and the signal is sent out into the great World Wide Web. Um, my name is Amelie. This is episode 52 of the Celestic Intelligence Podcast, and I love you guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day and Happy New Year.